There is a spark in you and in everyone you know. It is the kindling flame of kindness. It is the start of the fire by which one can warm their hands, get their toes nice and toasty, flush their cheeks with human kinship. There is a spark in you and in everyone you know. And the secret the systems around us cover over is that when we meet each other's eyes, the fire grows. The kindness is contagious. There is not depletion, but expansion. There is a spark in you and in everyone you know, and they will not consume each other, but it is true that they are in danger of being swallowed up. Because the spark in you is fuel, and we live in a society that plunders every kind of power it can for the profit of a few. Because the spark in you needs the warmth of others to be sustained, and we live in a time of deepening separation. There is a spark in you and in everyone you know, and the liberation of our spirits from the dampening influence of empire requires us to create community that fans the flames. Our society is in a crisis of care. And here's one example. Over the last 2 decades or more, healthcare systems in pursuit of the greatest profit possible have been streamlining and corporatizing their hospitals and clinics. They have closed masses of small rural hospitals, consolidating care into larger city centers that become easily overwhelmed by influxes of rural patients during times of, say, global pandemic. Doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals have been subjected to various productivity schemes, including limits on time spent with patients. Sometimes there's actually a timer running. And impossible caseloads. In the service of corporate efficiency, permanent staff positions have been cut until hospitals' resiliency to respond to surging needs and care were entirely depleted before a surging need and care found us. The capacity to provide true care in a sustainable way has been systematically dismantled in the guise of streamlining for efficiency. And healthcare professionals who joined the field out of an abundance of compassion are completely burned out. And then, the hyper-individualism of our society, manifest in anti-vax and anti-mask sentiment during the greatest public health crisis of our lifetimes, is a slap of cold water on sputtering embers of a spark barely kept alive. The same story is true in teaching and childcare fields, in the elder care field, social work, human rights work, every vocation centered in compassion, most of which are feminized under patriarchy, paid poverty wages, and devalued in a society obsessed with status. Care work is the most essential work, and it is not efficient, it is costly. We have experienced this more pointedly than ever in the last 2 years. But late-stage capitalism, which will extract value wherever it can, has found a workaround for the true costliness by treating care as a natural resource, which we should donate out of a sense of humanity while they commodify it. The economy under which we live idealizes and commodifies our compassion all at the same time, treating care like a precious resource to plunder, and caring professionals like their oil wells that they can pump away compassion reserves from, draining them dry for the profit of others, until we could be entirely forgiven for treating human compassion like a scarce resource, a spark that will be consumed if we meet anyone else's eyes. But moving through this life with our eyes cast down and our instincts for connection safely tucked away will drain our souls just as surely as those inhumane economic demands will. We are in a crisis of care. And the crisis is not a lack of human care, but its deep mistreatment within the systems that would plunder it. Because in truth, our community is full of compassion. Compassion that grows when it is not being extracted. And we are turning toward one another with care more than ever in these times of deep crisis and manufactured scarcity. In every space where systems enforce humanity, humans have been showing up to meet one another's eyes and grow the flame even still. The city refuses to adequately resource our unsheltered community in freezing temperatures, and the people show up with blankets. Nonprofits put up barriers to access basic needs, require Social Security cards at the food pantry, and the people stock the little free pantries on the corner, no questions asked. Power and light threatens to turn off the electricity when it's getting cold, and our church pays 100 utility bills. The spark in our eyes is not so fragile as all that. If compassion is fuel and capitalism is an oil well, maybe our humanity is the sun. And maybe our congregation is a solar panel, a mirror, a magnifying glass. I was talking with our affiliated community minister, the Reverend Dottie Matthews, about this recently. Many of you know Dottie, and you know that she is no stranger to compassion. Every now and then you meet a person who has systematically broken down everything that stands between their love and the world, and Dottie is one of those people. Her eyes contain the biggest spark I know. You can see it in your conversations with her or in her work, where she spent the first 4 years of her retirement changing the face of congregational-based support for asylum seekers in the United States and engaging national humanitarian dialogue on behalf of migrant rights. Anyhow, she would want me to move on. Dottie and I were talking about why folks need congregational life so much right now, in the face of a culture that tries to convince us of the lie, the scarcity of our own love. And she said something I've been mulling ever since. She gave me permission to quote her. She said, "People come to us because they don't know where to turn with their compassion." So many spaces are not trustworthy for our compassion, and we don't know where to turn with our humanity amid inhumane systems and institutions that shape our lives. But here in this congregation, we are devoted entirely to being trustworthy to love. Together, we seek to create a space for compassion that operates fully outside standards of efficiency and for the profit of no one at all, but for its own glorious sake, until those sparks in us become a roaring flame, free and warm. The importance of a space to turn with our compassion in this society cannot be overstated. It is soul-saving. We need it so badly. A place for our sparks to grow and join together. When people make their way into our doors or online space on a Sunday morning, I believe they do so because they have discovered a fire within them that needs letting out. They have discovered an inexhaustible love that is longing to make its way into the world, but that needs trustworthy community to do so, where their love won't be mistreated or extracted, but freed and released. People come looking for this because they have discovered, after finding that love within, that folks all around them are looking down at the ground, and systems are ready to plunder their care. And there are very few pathways for bringing compassion freely into the world, unconstrained. The culture around us is not nurturing, but we can be. The center of our mission of courageous love is to be a place trustworthy to human compassion, a place that shows that care emerging into mutuality and community is not depleted but magnified, that it doesn't vanish but grows and grows, a place where we are not burned out but nurtured in our humanity, stoked in the flame of the Spirit. We are a community that seeks to steward our resources rather than hoarding or draining them away. And human love is the most important resource we have. My hope is that our congregation is a community that proves the abundance of such an approach. That when we are allowed to let care, energy, money, love flow unimpeded through us and toward one another, when we keep it flowing like air rather than sending it and locking it away, our sparks are fanned into the most spectacular of flames. I've been having conversations about our congregation with our board and other leaders these last months, asking what our shared work has meant to them through these very challenging times. And I've noticed a beautiful pattern. When folks talk about what they're most proud of, every single time they describe an act of abundant generosity, stewarding and letting our resources flow. A leap of faith into giving and sharing that feels so good, it carries them through the dynamics of empire crowding into their daily lives. They name becoming a sanctuary congregation for migrant justice and using our building to protect someone. They name keeping the lights on for our neighbors in a utility mutual aid campaign. They name giving our whole building over for a season to keep unsheltered Colombians sleeping somewhere warm and safe last winter. And they also invariably name projects where they get to be a direct part of that compassion, helping to host our neighbors at the shelter by volunteering, mentoring our coming-of-age children as they create their very first belief statements, showing up with food at the funeral, protecting our democracy by getting out the vote, advocating at the protest for dignity, nurturing one another's spiritual growth in small groups. They name that we are a trustworthy place to turn with their compassion, a channel to help them carry their love out into the world, and a community where we take care of each other and our world. It's simple and rare. And we commit to each other this morning that we will keep making more of those pathways, keep freeing one another's compassion into the world and growing that work. This morning we began our annual generosity campaign when we ask our members and friends to reconsider their financial gifts to the church for the coming fiscal year. And for me, this is why my giving to the church is so deeply meaningful. Because this is the place I can turn with my compassion and know that it will be nurtured and drawn out into the world, magnified and treated carefully with dignity. This is why I pledge to our congregation about 3 times more than my gifts to nonprofits that I support. Because the church doesn't simply take my money off to do some good work with it, but supports our care work together. That helps me and you bring our love into the world. When I support the church, I am helping us create pathways for compassion that I get to participate in. I am investing in my spiritual growth and yours. We are fanning the flames in each other's eyes and helping release it out into the world through acts of love and compassion that we could not accomplish alone and often could not find pathways for without the work of our congregation. There is a spark in you and everyone you know, and there are those who would consume that spark. But there are also those who long to free it, to fan it, to nurture it. Our sparks long to enter the world through our acts of compassion, and they grow together. They grow when they are cared for, nurtured, received, and shared. May we do that work together. May we be a place together to turn with compassion, trustworthy to care, fanning the flames of love that are just waiting to shine forth from us. Let's shine, y'all.